Well, sure. I kind of have to give it, my story is sort of long, so it's not going to be few words necessarily, but I
It's
started my own
okay. It's
marketing.
okay.
Yeah, I started my own local marketing consulting practice about 30 years ago. Like a lot of people, no real plan. I knew I could hustle work. And so I got some big clients, little clients, big projects, little projects. But I landed a couple small business clients, and I really loved working with small businesses. But I also found them very frustrating. They had the same needs and challenges, certainly never the same budgets or even attention spans. So really around the year 2000, I decided that if I was going to work with small business owners, I was going to have to figure out a different way to do it. I was going to have to be able to walk in and say, look, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what you're going to do. Here's the results we hope to get. Here's what it costs. And essentially turn marketing into a very understandable, practical, almost product, as opposed to some custom service that was, made up every time. And in trying to solve my frustration, I actually realized very quickly that I was addressing what is still today one of the greatest frustrations for many businesses. It's very hard and gotten harder to buy marketing services because there's so many changes, so many new things, so many companies or service providers selling kind of the idea of the platform of the week. And so the fact that somebody would walk in and say, I'm going to install a marketing system. It's going to start with strategy before tactics, and you're going to know what it costs. It was a pretty revolutionary idea 20 years ago, and again, I'm still discovering in the world of small business. It's still a pretty innovative idea. And I think that the success of it for a lot of businesses is that it really does allow us to tie everything together and integrate all the various tactics as opposed to just treating them as something to try this week. Absolutely. And that's how we view it. I mean, most of the people come to us, most of our clients come to us in a certain stage. I mean, they need foundational work on their website. They're producing content, but it's not really doing much for them. And maybe they've paid a bunch of money for SEO or something like that, but they're not getting the results that they want on a consistent basis. So we have to fix that foundation first. And there are certain things that we are going to do. We're going to help them narrow their focus on who makes an ideal customer or client. We're going to help them create a core message that differentiates them. We're going to, as you started to talk about, map out their customer journey or something we call the marketing hourglass. So we're going to start with strategy. And what we find is that when we can define that strategy, when we can map out that strategy, we give them a strategic advantage. And that allows us to then kind of systematically decide what the tactics need to be. We improve their online foundation, and then we can start moving to generating leads that are the right kind of leads. And then from there, we can start converting more of those leads to customers. And then we can start talking about enhancing the entire customer experience and creating monthly recurring revenue, maybe. So, I mean, there is the system does, as you said, really imply that there is a process, there's a set of steps, there are stages that we try to move people through. And I think that that's the difference. We start with, okay, you've got this set of problems. We're going to fix those problems, but here's where we're going. Here's the ultimate roadmap for growing your business, rather than just putting band-aids on, the things that they think they need today. Well, there's no question. I mean, I doubt that any of your listeners wake up and think to themselves, I think I'll go buy some strategy today. I mean, as you said, what they're trying to do is fix their problems. Why do people always ask for a lower price, when I'm working with them? Or how come my competitors always show up in front of me in search engines when I go to search? So they're very focused on those problems that or symptoms, really, I should say. But when I get them to start understanding that the reason people are asking for a lower price or a different price or not a premium price is because they can't differentiate you between everybody else who says they do what you do. And so what do they have left but to say, well, you're cheaper than the other person.
Mm.
When we start connecting the problems that they're feeling or the symptoms that they're feeling to being problems of strategy, then I can get people's attention to say, we need to invest in finding a way that differentiates you. We need to talk to your customers and understand the problems you really solve for them and start using that as our messaging. So it does sometimes take some convincing, because people come to us all the time. It's like, my website doesn't work, fix it. But that's really more of a symptom in most cases of not having a properly thought out strategy that's going to allow you to serve, and attract those ideal customers in a way that they actually expect to pay a premium to work with you, because they so thoroughly understand that you get the problems that they have.
And I think it's a great answer. But on the other hand, you also have some entrepreneurs that are fully agreed that strategy is coming first,
Sure.
always.
Yes.
But when you're dealing with small businesses, the problem is that they have to conceive the strategy, and they also have to deal with the doing part.
Yeah.
And one of the issue they have is that when you're going too deep into the operational sides of things and the tactics and the things, it's so time consuming that at
Sure.
some point you lose sight of the
Yeah.
strategy.
Yeah. One of the things that we always say is that a great strategy actually tells you as much what not to do as what to do. And so
Mm.
that's where I think the lever of strategy comes in. So many entrepreneurs, as you said, they look out there and they see what people are saying they should do and what's in the news, and they think, well, I need to be on TikTok, and I need to be on this, I need to do that.
So
A
true.
lot of, and a lot of those tactics, I mean, some of those tactics may actually be valuable if they had the resources and time to dedicate to them. But because they don't, we have to help them develop what are the 3 priorities that we need to do that are going to have the most impact. And I think a proper strategy of who you're trying to attract, how you're trying to communicate you're different, how
Mhm.
you're trying to create a better experience so that people stay with you and refer you, that in many cases can be far more impactful than trying to find some new avenue or channel to shout from. So before people get too nervous about that idea, we're not necessarily saying only work with a handful of customers. I mean, there are markets that you can serve that you deliver a tremendous amount of value to, or can, that might be quite large, actually. But the mistake that a lot of businesses make is, let's say you are a remodeling contractor or a service business like an accountant or something. And, the belief is, well, anyone who has a home or anyone who needs to do taxes, for example, is a potential client. And so, the way we talk about our business then is that, anybody who needs accounting, we're an accountant, come and get it. And what we want to, what typically happens is, we go into a business and we say, okay, let's rank your clients by profitability. That's step number 1. And what we typically end up finding is somewhere around the top 20% of their clients produce the most revenue and profit. And somewhere around the bottom 20 or 30%, they're probably losing money on. So that exercise all of a sudden, really helps people understand, gosh, we shouldn't be, we definitely need to say, here's who we work with and here's who we don't work with. You don't have to say it in terms quite like that, but by defining who you can get a great result for, then you necessarily kind of keep people who aren't going to be a good fit away. So that's step number 1. And then we start really we take that group of profitable clients and we start looking at, is there anyone in that group that actually refers business to you as well? And we really want to take that dynamic of your most profitable customers who already are having a great experience. They're evangelists. They like what they're doing. You're clearly getting them a lot of value, or they wouldn't be referring you. If we can figure out then the common characteristics of that group, that in many cases allows us to narrow our focus. So a lot of times when people think of niche, they think of, oh, it's a certain industry that I work with, or, I only work with chiropractors or something like that. And what my term is, I mean, there certainly are a lot of businesses that can just work with a certain industry, or maybe an executive coach works only with women, for example. I mean, those are legitimate ways to kind of narrow your focus. But within whatever niche you pick, then what we discover is that there are certain values, there are certain behaviors that you're looking for that really make somebody an ideal customer. Because if somebody understands, what you do that's different, and understands, how you get people value, that you're not going to compete on price as much. It really becomes an expectation that they're going to pay a premium to work with you. So it's not really just saying I'm only going to work with a certain industry. In fact, for my entire career, we work with many, many different types of industries, but we work with a certain type of business owner who
Okay.
who believes that marketing is an investment, that believes in that there's value in strategy, and we work with those folks, and we attract those folks by communicating that message. I mean, if anybody who's read my books, is probably not going to come to me and say, "Oh, that's great, but we just want you to do social media." I mean, they're clearly going to come to, if they call us, they've already got somewhat of an educated point of view about how we see marketing, and so they're going to be a good fit.
Great answer. Honestly, different one, because if that is true, each time you say to someone you need to niche down, oh yeah, I need to work only with dentists or only with lawyers, and that's the first step, but not the main step. Okay. Um, one question here.
Well, let me just add on that. It needs to be lawyers of a certain type. For example, or lawyers that are trying to accomplish a certain type of growth. Where a lot of people make mistakes is that they look at the market and say, "Where's the opportunity for me as a business?" But if you actually start looking at your clients the way I'm suggesting, you'll start looking at clients and saying, "Who can I deliver the most value to?" I mean, who's a good fit for what I do, not who's a good fit for my business.
So you mean that to define those criteria, you work on an actual customer basis, correct?
Yeah.
You don't start from scratch. You analyze your current customers and you
Yeah.
identify. Yeah.
I mean, obviously there are people just starting out. They've got to do something, they've got to guess maybe at who makes an ideal customer. But yeah, we spend a lot of time as part of our process interviewing our customers. We look at their Google reviews, for example, because there are clues in those interviews and clues in those Google reviews
That's a very
about
good
what
point.
about what people truly value about what you do, and it's probably not what you're saying on your website. So we really get some great core messaging ideas from that. What I'm trying to suggest there, and this is in my last book, The Ultimate Marketing Engine, what I'm
That's
trying to suggest there is a point of view. Once you understand that, I say top 20% of your customer base, that's your ideal customer. Once you fully understand who they are, what challenges they have, what characteristics, what they look like, and so you start marketing, to those folks to attract more of them. I believe that and I use the kind of the idea of member, not as a membership or subscription program, but really more as a point of view that your goal now is to take them from where they are to where they want to go, as opposed to simply create a transaction. I mean, it's a point of view that suggests, how could you create, or at least begin to create, a transformation in the business or in the lives of your customers. And I think that's more of a membership point of view. It's almost like your customers are joining your organization to go on this journey to get a transformation, rather than just the transaction that they paid for.
That's great. Can we say that a customer is a subscriber?
Yeah, I mean, I again, I was going to say
Subscriber
it's,
to content. That's my
yeah.
point. I
Oh yeah,
merged
yeah.
them.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, we all know today, or at least we've all seen examples today of that's how you guide the customer journey, is using content. So somebody comes to know about your business, and then they go and they find something that they want to, give you their email address to download, and then they read additional content, and they begin to trust you enough to say, "Hey, I want you to come tell me how you could do this for my business." I mean, that in a lot of ways, that journey is somebody subscribing, to be guided, if you will. In some ways, they're literally subscribing. I mean, they're getting onto your email list. But in a lot of ways, to think about it is that you're answering more questions, you're answering more objectives for them, and so they move closer to that point of trusting you so much that they want to spend either their time or their money learning how you can help them solve the problems they're trying to solve. Yeah, I mean, we probably employ 3 or 4 things. I mean, in many cases, if you're not taking advantage of the questions that you're getting asked anyway in
Mhm.
sales presentations or in email inquiries, or just somebody goes to your website and wants to know how something works. I mean, you should be collecting all of that information and start, in many cases you see on websites frequently asked questions. Well, hopefully those are informed, by questions that were actually being asked by people. In some cases, I've gone into organizations and said, let me look at your customer service or your salespeople's outbound emails. Let's look at the questions they've been answering,
That's
in
amazing.
many
Yeah.
in many sales things, and in some cases customer service. What are the questions you're getting after somebody becomes a customer because they don't understand how to use something, or they want to do more, or they're confused about what they bought even. I mean, those are all great places for questions. We also, about once a quarter, suggest that people have some sort of a process where they talk face to face or over the phone or however they want to do it, with a handful of customers, and just ask them, try to get into how they're using your product or service, what they're getting, what they're not getting, why they chose you in the first place, what you do that's different. I mean, that there are many ways in which you can collect this data, but you've got to make it intentional, or you won't take advantage of it, even though it's right there in front of your face. And the beauty of questions is, if one person's asking it, there's probably 10 people that also 10 other people that also have that same question. So making that in some ways almost the basis of your content plan,
For
quite
sure.
frankly, is an easy way to make sure that you're producing content that will truly be valuable. There are some tools. I mean, obviously, just if you go to Google and start searching a question that you think your customers might ask, they will suggest other questions. There's another tool we use all the time called Ask the Public, and
Answer
you
or answer the public or ask.
answer the public.
Yeah,
Answer the public.
answer the
Yeah.
public. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Answer the public. Which you can go in there
Mhm.
and put in a term, and it'll give you some ideas about the questions people are actually asking about that. So there definitely are some tools, but boy, your customers or prospects quite often are asking the questions, if as long as you are mining them and tabulating them and answering them.
That's one of the things you mentioned in your book. You said don't even think of doing that was in duct tape marketing, not in the
Yeah.
last one. But don't even think of making a sales online when you're a small business. Everything happens outside of it, offline precisely. So that's exactly what you say for customer questions.
Well,
Which
yeah,
is
and look, just to clarify that, I mean, obviously everybody's online today, and that's the way a lot of people start their journey. They go search
sure.
on Google, they find your business, they look at your website, they kick around a little bit, and then quite often for local businesses, then they pick up the phone or fill out a form or something, and the transaction may ultimately be done in your office or in your store. But they got to that point of wanting to do the transaction quite often completely through an online process.
Or
Well,
it's
yeah,
not doable like
we've
that.
talked a little bit about it. One
Yep.
is doing these interviews. I mean, we find quite often that we'll ask people questions like, "What does this company do that others don't?" And so they'll say, "Oh, they provide good service," which of course isn't much of a differentiator. So we'll go deeper. Well, tell me a story about a time they provided good service for you. And it's amazing some of the things that you'll start hearing, themes that will come up and recur. And I also mentioned, Google reviews. If you've got 20 plus, 5-star Google reviews, you should go read every single one of those, not just so you can say, "Oh, look, they're saying good things about us." I mean, that's obviously awesome, but read the actual words that they're saying, the phrases and the terms they're using. What we have discovered time and time again is in those reviews and in those interviews, people will actually start revealing the real problem that you solve for them. There's an example in my last book that I use all the time, of a tree service that we worked with. And of course, they promoted that they did great work, and, they were reliable and those kinds of things. When we interviewed their clients and looked at the reviews, we saw time and time again, they said They showed up when they said they would, and
Mm.
they cleaned up the job site after they left. The assumption by most people, true or not, is if you have a chainsaw and a truck, you can probably cut a tree down. But will you show up, at the appointed time, and will you clean up, after? Because a lot of people are gone at work and they come home, and the job site's either cleaned up or it's not. And so that's the real thing that their best customers were not getting from other people that serve them. And so we turned that seemingly odd combination into their core message. We'll show up when we say we will, and we'll clean up the job site,
Yeah,
before we leave.
that was my question. That's what
Yeah.
you said. And which type of, sorry for that. Which type of content did you build around this?
So a couple things. We made that their core message. So above the fold on the website, when you go there, it says, we'll show up when we say we, because
That's
people
great.
know they're a tree service. It's amazing to me, all the websites you show up and to say, we're a tree service. It's like, well, yeah, we knew that already.
Voilà.
but to say, but here's how we're different. Here's the problem we solve for you. Now, it's not enough to just have that as your tagline,
No,
on a business card or
that's my
something,
point.
right? And so we also created processes for them. So part of the sales process for them was that they would give you their on-time guarantee, which was actually a process that said, you're going to get X off if we promise to show up. And if we don't, we're going to give you this, this discount. When they went out to quote the job, which often, people do, they have to go out and look at the tree to find out, what challenges are going to be there. They would actually give the person with the quote their 27-step checklist of how they made sure that the job site was cleaned up impeccably. So you not only make those words, you make those part of the customer experience, part of the sales process, part of the branding of the entire organization. So that's how you make this like core difference. A significant part of your strategy is that you build process and content around it. So when a lot of people think about this idea of the customer journey, it's really more about demand creation. How do I get somebody to know about us? And the customer funnel or the
Mm.
marketing funnel is something that people probably are more aware of. Um, and unfortunately for me, where I have a problem with that is it typically ends at we got the sale. So it's all about, how do we get them to do what we want them to do so we get a sale, and that's the end of it. So what I created was this metaphor of the hourglass, which does certainly borrow from the funnel shape. I mean, we do have to get some percentage of the market out there to know that we exist, and some smaller percentage to know that they're an ideal client. But then for the hourglass, I flipped the funnel over at the point at which somebody becomes a customer, because to me, that's where real growth occurs in an organization, is the retention part, and the part where they tell their friends, neighbors, and colleagues, the referral part. And so those behaviors, as you mentioned, are really kind of how I define it. Because we can talk all about all the changes, and a lot of marketers are very stressed out about this new platform and that new platform. But the thing people forget is, since I've been in business, the thing that's changed the most is how people can buy now and how they do buy
Mm.
now. And so a lot of the journey that we used to try to create or force, is really out of our hands anymore. We were talking about the way people buy now is they go and they research and they ask their friends, and they look and see who else trusts you, and if there's other social proof, and then and only then do they maybe contact us as a business. I mean, they've maybe even made their buying decision already based on everything they've been doing. So I suggest that our job as behavior as marketers is less about creating demand and more about organizing the behaviors that people want to participate in with the businesses they do business with. And those 7 behaviors are know, like, and trust, try, buy, repeat, and refer. And it really, by understanding that framework, and then just looking at each of those stages and saying, what do we need to do at this stage and at this stage? And once somebody becomes a customer, and how do we intentionally get them to buy more, or to stay a customer, and how do we intentionally generate referrals? Just by focusing on the fact that all of those stages exist really allows you to prioritize the campaigns and the content and the marketing that you create. Yeah, I mean, probably the thing that's changed the most is how people can come to know about our business. I mean,
Mm,
there are all these platforms. I mean, we can go directly to consumers now, without the middle steps or the dealers and things like that. So I mean, that's probably the thing that's changed the most. The thing that hasn't changed at all, in my opinion, is that we have to earn trust for somebody to not just to buy from us, but to be convinced that we, regardless of price, in some cases, that we are the answer for them. And I think that that part probably has changed the least, because when it really comes down to it, that's when somebody's looking closely at our business. Obviously, they can look at videos, they can look at things on our website that will help develop that trust, but they have to believe, through proof that we can share, they have to believe that they'll get the result that's promised, that we will deliver on what we talk about. And so, the way that other people talk about our business, what we share in a sales conversation, maybe if there's a way for them to try what it might be like to work with our business, that's that last step of earning the trust to get the sale, to me hasn't really changed that much. And it really is about building relationships as much as it is about telling everybody how great you are. It probably is very close to that topic cluster that you're talking about.
okay.
And really, for the last 10 years, this SEO and content have become really linked. I mean, the days when somebody could just go out and hire somebody to come to my website and SEO it, are really over. I mean, Google has, Google's only goal when you go to a search engine is to deliver what they think is going to be the most useful, most valuable content. That actually has never changed. They've just gotten a lot better at it. And so consequently, the bar has really been raised for marketers. I mean, we have to produce more useful, better content that sends the signals to the search engines and frankly to the people that visit that content, that this is something worth their time. So, we all jumped on blogging 10, 15 years ago, and at that point, that was a big innovation. I mean, here's changing dynamic content that people update frequently. I mean, that was a big change in the world of content. Well, everybody got the message. And so now there was, kind of this content dump out there, that people were just producing lots and lots of content that was probably not that useful. And it was just kind of going off into the ether. So in a way to combat that, a lot of organizations that were producing good content, started looking at, how can we find ways to take this content and turn it into not only longer, more valuable content, but turn it into content that is more useful because it is searchable itself. It is, the basic idea behind a hub page is I'll have we will have a major topic. I have them on my website, the guide to local marketing. Well, that's a big topic. And so we break it up into 5 subtopics. Google My Business, some SEO, even AdWords or Google advertising, as kind of major categories of, and it becomes almost a whole course, or really a table of contents for a whole book, if you will, that resides on one hub page. Each of the topics, or the narrower topics, then links out to an individual blog post, and all of these blog posts link back to the hub page. So that internal structure is maybe 40 pages, all linking back to one single topic page. And so the way search engines work is they go there and they say, oh, this has a lot of really great keywords on it. This really seems to be
Related.
talking about this subject, but let's look at all the links that it links to, and that all link back to this. And it allows the search engines then to say, this is a significant topic. This is a topic that goes very, very deep, because there, in all, that hub page probably links back and forth to about 50,000 words of content. And so if you search, if you Google the term guide to local marketing, maybe not in France, but in the US, if you Google the term guide to local marketing, that's going to come up number 1 in a very, very competitive search term. But because of the not only the content that's there, but the internal structure that we've created around that content. And in many cases, we'll actually take a website where maybe they've produced 500 blog posts, but they're just kind of one off,
Mhm.
this and that, over time, like a content management system does. If we bring those things together in a structure that actually makes sense, not just to the search engines, but to anybody who's looking for information. I mean, people find our page, Guide to Local Marketing. They might click on 12 pages. They may stay on there for an hour, reading that content. And that just sends signals to the search engines that, this is clearly past the test of being useful content.
So that's the summary of a good content strategy for the coming years, correct?
When we work with folks and we help them develop a strategy first, that's kind of our first process. We may say we need to fix these kind of core pages on your website because they're a
Mhm.
mess. But the very next thing we will do is say, look, let's take the content you've produced, find a way to package it as maybe 2 or 3 substantial hub pages that are going to be useful in terms of generating business for you. If somebody finds them, and maybe the next 6 months we're going to work on just accomplishing that from a content standpoint, that goal, because long term, that's going to serve businesses quite well. I actually talk about it as editorial research, but it's kind of the same thing. I mean, we use keyword research. The days when you would do keyword research because you would then cram, 10 keywords into a blog post and that would have some benefit, are really over. So we use keyword research really kind of for the entire structure. So as we build, say, one of these hub pages, we might say, hey, these topics really need to be on here, and using these phrases to maybe talk about these. But it's really more at the high level, kind of developing the editorial outline, as opposed to just doing keyword research because I want to rank for a certain term, with this blog post. It's gotten, unless you are just in an incredibly niche industry, it's very difficult to try to take one blog post and rank it for a certain term, which is what I think a lot of SEO people, how SEO was kind of seen for many years. Now it's really the website as a whole, and the editorial outline, that's going to eventually allow you to rank for many search terms. So this really goes hand in hand with referrals. So we got lucky here, because a lot of times when people come to me and they say, I'm just starting, what should I do first? I always talk about strategic partners, which is really a form of referral. So my advice is to go out and find 6 or 8 companies or individuals or businesses that have what you think is your ideal customer. So for example, when I was getting started, a lot of software companies were just starting to try to sell to small businesses. So I targeted a handful of software companies and I produced an ebook and a webinar. And I went to them and I said, hey, I'll do this webinar for you for free. I've got this ebook. You can co-brand it and send it out to your list, because they were not producing that much content at the time. Excuse me. So I think, specifically to your question, I would take that money and I would invest in a great deal of it in producing, getting somebody to design. I mean, obviously you've got to have something useful to say, but getting somebody to design an ebook or a end-to-end, maybe a slide deck for a webinar, maybe some promotional materials around that, and then go to find a handful of companies, organizations that have your ideal customer in mind, and offer to let them co-brand that, or offer to do that kind of presentation for their audience, free of charge. And what obviously, your hope is that you are going to gain then tremendous amount of exposure. It's going to be exposure from a trusted partner who's saying, what you're talking about, and which is far better than you saying, what you talk about. And it can, in many cases, be a great way to kickstart a business.